What's up, everybody? We are live straight from the behind our studio. We are joined by a TSN reporter, Mr. Aaron Bronsteter. How's it going today, friends?
Good, Simon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Did I get that name right in the
Bronsteter.
beginning?
Bronsteter, but it's all good.
Perfect. All right, so first time. My apologies. So, how's it going today, my friend?
Everything's good. How about you? Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, it was awesome. I heard it's your oldest son's birthday today. So how's the day? I know you spent half a day with him. How was that today?
He's 10, so he's much closer in age to you than I am to you. So that's but it's amazing to me that I have a 10-year-old kid. It seems like just yesterday that we had our first, but yeah, it's his 10th birthday. So it's I'm taking some time away from him to hang out with you. So it's a pleasure to be on this.
I gotta feel that one hit me in the heart there. I appreciate that. Yeah. So, what's something you usually do with the family when you're not so focused on TSN reporting and MMA reporting? What is something you can bond with your family during the downtime?
We watch a lot of TV together. They're in school during the day. They're doing virtual school, so I help them with that whenever I can. But most of the time, I'm in my office working away on whatever is coming up, whatever I have assigned that day. So, but we play video games together. We hang out. We watch different TV shows. Today for his birthday, I went and got a bunch of balloons for him, a big Pikachu balloon, and we went. I went to Krispy Kreme Donuts and bought donuts for everybody. So just a fun day for the family today, and we had a Zoom happy birthday for him with some of our other families so they could join us. So that's been the day so far.
So how many times have you had the Krispy Kreme donuts before?
Well, they just opened one near us, but
okay.
I don't eat anything with refined sugar, so I didn't have any. But the rest of my family enjoyed them.
Really?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you what's the best one, but I guess we'll never know now.
Well, what I used to like the ones with the sprinkles on them. I guess Hawaiian or whatever you want to call it, the vanilla dip. I don't know what they're called now.
Fair enough. The vanilla dip ones. We'll go with that. The
vanilla dip.
Kind you can get. Yeah. All right. So you're doing your TSN reporting when you're away from the family. What type of projects necessarily can we expect from you in coming months? What have you been working on?
Well, for this week, I did an essay on Anderson Silva and about how he's often overlooked in the conversation for the greatest of all time. A lot of people don't realize what it was like to watch Anderson Silva in his prime. He was basically just a phenom, and somebody that was like must-see TV. You just never knew what he was going to do. It was so unpredictable and just so good, and it seemed like he was just so much better than everybody. So a lot of people forget about how good he is. So that aired on SportsCenter last night. It was kind of a feature on SportsCenter about Anderson Silva coming off of Khabib's retirement, about how we need to give Anderson his due as well. In terms of upcoming projects, it's mostly just week-to-week coverage, interviews, and we have the TSN MMA show podcast. I recently split that up into two. So one half of it is Bazooka Joe Valtellini and myself talking about everything going on in the world of mixed martial arts, UFC, Bellator, and anything along those lines. You should go and train with Joe. I'm sure he'd love to have you in the gym. Other than that, we do interviews. So this week's interviews was Anderson Silva, Uriah Hall, Gerald Mearshart, and Bobby Green. So that's split up into two podcasts. So a lot of my week is based on the podcasts, writing articles for TSN Edge now. That's something I'm doing, which is giving different betting looks, betting information regarding the upcoming cards. So I spend some time doing that, and then a lot of it is just trying to report on any news that I'm chasing, whether it's an upcoming fight or someone signing with a promotion or anything along those lines.
So I've watched some previous interviews that you've done, and I know you started from I believe it was a university or college basketball game. So why or how, I guess, necessarily did you switch over to doing MMA reporting?
Yeah, I wanted to cover basketball when I was younger. That was what my goal was to be a play-by-play basketball commentator, and I got to do it in university. But then as I started to get into the into the media industry, I started to kind of shift my focus a little bit. I was very good at doing behind the scenes thing, producing and things like that. So I started off doing producing, and then I got some reps along the way doing some on air stuff. My focus was never getting to be on air or doing anything along those lines. So it's kind of rarefied air that I was able to get to have a job doing on air things, reporting and things like that. But I think a lot of it had to do with just how passionate I was about mixed martial arts and about covering the sport. I think TSN saw that I had a real affinity for mixed martial arts and reporting on that. So they took a leap of faith with me, and I'm forever thankful for that. And that's kind of how I got from I guess covering basketball back then, and then I was doing a lot of radio producing, guest booking, and things like that for radio and TV, and then I shifted into reporting. So it's been kind of an interesting path for me, very different from a lot of others.
Okay, so you have to be honest with me here. You said you were a fan of basketball in your university college years. How good of a player were you actually in basketball?
Not very good. I was not good enough to make a team, but I used to play a lot of rec basketball. It was more of a hobby for me. I wasn't a diehard player. I was mostly just into covering the sport. I loved watching college basketball, NBA, covering it however I could. But I was never a great player. I was okay, but I wouldn't purport to be anything better than okay.
Very honest man. I thought you were gonna hype yourself up a little bit. Oh, I was like the LeBron James of the university, but you're being honest with us.
No, I was not the LeBron James of my university. I was the LeBron James of covering basketball for the university, maybe, but that's about as far as that would go. Well, a lot of people that cover these sports in terms of the reporting side of things are we're never really great at it. A lot of the people that were really great at whether it's martial arts, basketball, end up doing more of an analyst role. With TSN, we kind of have that split up. I do the reporting and the writing and things like that, and Robin Black does all of our analysis because he's a former professional fighter and is a lot more well versed in the X's and O's part of things. Whereas I come from a journalism background rather than a sporting background, so that's where most of my skills in terms of covering the sport come from.
So as far as basketball, since you have that background knowledge, I guess, what were your thoughts on that? I'm curious, taking back home another trophy.
Well, I thought that once they acquired Anthony Davis, they were headed in the right direction. I mean, having two of the 5 best players in the league potentially on your team certainly can't hurt. And I thought that, I was surprised at how well those two meshed together. But Anthony Davis is a perpetually underrated basketball player. A lot of people look at the Steph Currys of the world, people that are really good at shooting. But in terms of big men, like Anthony Davis is about as good as it gets. So having those two guys on the same team, you could kind of see the writing on the wall there. Although the NBA is pretty stacked right now. There are a lot of really good tandems in the league. You look at Paul George and Kawhi with the Clippers. I thought the Raptors, all things considered, given that they lost Kawhi, still have a fantastic team. I think the Celtics have a really strong up-and-coming team. So, but the Lakers winning the championship wasn't a big surprise to me.
Yeah, so talking about the Raptors, close to there anyways. I know you're close to there. Who do you think they're trading, or are they going to be making any trades this year?
Masai Ujiri is pretty calculated with trades. If they do trade, I don't think it'll be in the offseason. I think a lot of their offseason work is going to be based on, they might swing a small draft day trade or two there, but I think a lot of their focus is going to be on retaining some of their free agents and keeping cap space clear for next year, where there's always been rumors that Giannis might be interested in joining the Raptors. So I'm sure they're probably going to keep that money free for Giannis in the event that they're able to somehow sign him. I know him and Masai Ujiri have a good relationship, so who knows? Maybe they got parlayed into him signing with the Raptors.
Okay, so now that we're covering MMA, we talked a little bit about basketball. You have very well knowledge in that. I got to give you that. But for MMA, it's on tonight. So I don't know if you saw, there were some reports on there's multiple fighters that were actually that were cut from their role in Bellator. So including the names of Ricky Bandejas, Franger, and also some other legends. Have you gotten any word on that?
Yeah, my colleague Jason Floyd reported on a lot of the different cuts in Bellator, and Ricky Bandejas surprised me, but he just fought like 2 weeks ago, didn't he? He fought very recently, and then you saw some of the other names like Joe Schilling. It surprised me that they cut Joe Schilling because I feel like Joe Schilling is one of those must-watch TV guys that you want to keep aboard, and apparently a lot of the fighters found out from those tweets that they had been released, which I think is very strange and not great business practices. But I don't know how much of that is true. But yeah, a lot of them apparently found out through like social media that they were no longer with the promotion. So yeah, a lot of names. They've been signing a lot of good fighters too. So maybe they're trying to clear up some roster space for some of their big signings. Like they signed Usman Nurmagomedov, who's a big up and coming prospect, the cousin of Khabib. And a lot of people say he might end up being the best Nurmagomedov. I guess we'll see about that. It'll be tough to fill that role given how good Khabib was. But a lot of people say Usman is very good. And they've done I think they've done a good job of signing a lot of solid prospects. A lot of them just haven't panned out. Like I feel like there are a lot of big names that they brought on board that didn't hold up their end of the bargain, or that they didn't do good matchmaking for. So we'll see how it ends up playing out with a lot of their prospects. But certainly this year, not having events for a long time probably got them to be a little bit strapped for cash. And when they want to sign all these big names, they kind of have to cut some of their other names in the process. Like I'm sure that Roy Nelson wasn't cheap to have on their roster. Frank Mir, as you mentioned, I'm sure cost a lot of money to have him compete for under the Bellator umbrella. So I kind of understand why that had to happen.
The thing is, where these legends, I guess, or these older, they're not so much anymore, like Frank Mir, Roy Nelson. Where do they go? Been in the UFC. Did they just retire after that, or what goes on there?
Maybe. There's also bare knuckle. It seems like a lot of the fighters after they're done with the major promotions, like Roy Nelson, I could see doing bare knuckle. I think that would be a great fit for him, given that that's most of what he did was punching, right? So I think that would be a good fit for him. I'm not sure about Frank Mir. I know Frank Mir does have some broadcasting jobs, and I think he's one of the most underrated analysts in MMA in terms of color analysts on broadcast. I think he does a really great job, and I know he's focusing a lot on his daughter, who's an up-and-coming mixed martial artist, got her first win recently at age 17. So I think that they are that's kind of where he might be starting to focus his energies on. I don't know if Frank Mir would want to do bare knuckle or anything along those lines, but I guess we'll see.
I mean, I don't know if I'd want to do bare knuckle either. That would turn my hands a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like a lot of people look at bare knuckle and think that it's really dangerous, but it's probably less dangerous than boxing and MMA because people are worried.
You gotta really think about this question here. If you had a time machine, would you travel to the future or the past? And you gotta give us a valid reason why.
It's a great question. I wouldn't mind traveling back to the past and just like starting over at like 14 and see how things play out, and then maybe get back in the time machine once I reach a certain age, and then go back to what I was doing presently. I don't know how the time machine works. You're gonna have to fill me in. But if I could, do you mean like if I could go to like a certain moment? It doesn't need to be a past part of my life. It can just be any time.
Okay. Yeah. Any time. We'll leave it nice and freely open.
I'd probably go to like a concert in the 60s or something. That's probably what I would want, or go to like a jazz club in like the 1950s or 60s. As long as I can get back to where I'm at now, it would be fun to jump into a time machine, catch like a Miles Davis concert or something like that, and then come back as if nothing had happened. But geez, that would be fun. That would be kind of cool to see. It'd be cool to see like a lot of different music legends perform live that aren't around anymore. That's probably what I would want to do if I could get in a time machine. I don't know. Going to the future, I feel like doesn't entice me because I would like to kind of see how the future kind of unfolds. I feel like that would be like a big spoiler in life if you go to the future, and then maybe if I were to go to the future, I'd go like 500 years into the future and just see what things are like. If in 500 years there is in fact a future, given how we're treating this planet. But that's kind of what I'd like to do. If I were to go into the future, it'd be like in the far future. If I was to go into the past, it'd be like 60 years ago.
Okay. So we got to give my history teacher a shout out here. I've been learning online. If you want to go to where that jazz was popular, you get back in the 1930s. That's when it was really hot.
No. That's big band jazz. I'm not into big band jazz. No. I don't want to. I don't need to go to see the Glenn Miller Orchestra. I want to see like Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Charles Mingus and all of those I guess jazz musicians. Hard bop musicians, that's the word I was looking for as the genre of jazz. The hard bop musicians from back in like the late 50s and early 60s. That's more my speed.
Yeah, I see. That makes sense then. Gotta do everyone's favorite thing here. We gotta do the commercial. So Jock Farm, connecting fighters, athletes, and coaches to the world. Find us on www.jockfarm.com today. All right, so we had Loma versus Lopez a little while ago. I know you're not the biggest reporter, I guess we could say, in the boxing world, but you had to have watched a little clip of that. So talk to us. Did you see that?
I watched the whole fight. I thought going
Okay.
into it that Lopez was being a little bit underrated. Most of my boxing knowledge comes from listening to Morning Combat with Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas. They talk about boxing very frequently, and I don't have the ability to cover to like follow boxing as much as I follow MMA because there's just too much stuff. I don't have enough time in a day to focus all of my efforts on more than one thing. If I start getting into boxing, I'd probably go down the rabbit hole. And I also don't find boxing quite as entertaining as mixed martial arts in terms of just from a viewer standpoint. But I was really stoked for Loma and Lopez. And from what I had been hearing about Teofimo Lopez, he was he's a really, really good boxer. And I figured that he would give Loma some trouble, but it's hard to think of guys like Lomachenko losing, right? Because they're just so far ahead of everybody else. But you look at the weight discrepancy, you look at how young Lopez is and how well he was doing. I don't think people were giving him enough credit going into that fight. It's easy to say in hindsight, but that's kind of how I felt going in as well.
Yeah, so I talked about this in my last video. If you want to go check it out. But we talked about how Lomachenko was a little bit of a slow starter in that fight, which usually if you watch his previous fights, he is kind of a slow starter, but in this one, he didn't really seem to find that gas pedal to eventually pick it up.
Yeah, people were talking about him being a slow starter, and then the next thing you knew was like the 5th or 6th round, and he just still hadn't started. I was thinking he can't be that slow of a starter. You don't want to give away half the fight. So when I was on social media, people were like, "Oh, it's okay, Loma's a slow starter." I was like, "Okay, well, let's see when he starts revving it up," and it just never happened. It didn't happen until like the 6th or 7th round. So I thought that fight.
I was listening to the commentators. Sorry, I cut you off.
No worries. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I was listening to the commentators, and they were arguing back and forth. I don't know if you heard. They're like, Lomachenko doesn't seem to actually be stingy. There was one guy who was a big Lopez fan, but and then they were saying how, oh no, don't worry, he's a slow starter always. But it was funny. They were arguing back and forth about if he was gonna pick up at all.
It is weird listening to boxing commentary where you've got guys cheering openly for other fighters on the broadcast. I'm thinking, like, isn't your job to be like, just call it straight instead of being like, yeah, Lopez, this guy's, he's doing it. It's like, well, yeah, like we get it, but you don't need to cheer for the guy. You're on the broadcast team. Like you're not his manager. You're not like you're not on his team. You're there to call the shots. I don't know. I found that very off-putting as someone who like you see Cormier, and when he calls fights for like Deron Wynn or Khabib, he's actually the opposite. I find that he overcorrects the steering wheel, and he's actually extra hard on them if they're not doing what they should be doing. I think that's the way that it should be called. I don't think that you need to have guys with the pom-poms on for a certain fighter during the event.
You maybe read my mind there. I was just going to talk about that. You have the commentary team. Sometimes Dominic Cruz will be commentating once in a while. Paul Felder, those guys will be commentating for the fighters that they train with. And like you said, they'll be going maybe opposite for the other guy, which is crazy.
They don't want to seem like they're biased.
They have to be like that. Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right, so we got 2 questions for you, and these ones, I'm going to be honest, they require a lot of thinking. So a lot has been discussed about this in the MMA world, more recently after the Khabib fight. So you got to give us Aaron's top 5 greatest MMA fighters. Go.
All right. Do you want me to start with 5 or 1?
Go from least to greatest.
From which?
From 5 to 1.
You want me to go 5 to 1? Okay. Well, let me do it in my head first. Okay, you got him. Okay. And you got him. And the hard one for me is like number 5. I feel like there are 4 that are right there, like that you would have to put in there. Okay. So number 5, and people don't like that I say this because they think it's Fedor, but I think it's got to be Stipe. I feel like Stipe doesn't get mentioned in the conversation of the all-time greats as much as he should. If you look at the most title defenses in men's heavyweight in UFC heavyweight history, the names that he's beaten, him beating Francis, him beating Cormier twice. I feel like Stipe needs to be there. I think I would put Stipe at number 5. You don't see him on a lot of top 5 lists, but I think based on his body of work at heavyweight and all the guys that he's beaten, and the only loss that he hasn't avenged is against Stefan Struve, and those guys are like a chasm apart from one another now. So I would put Stipe at number 5. Number 4, I would put Khabib. I think if you look at overall skill and pound for pound talent, and dominance, I feel like Khabib is way higher on the list. But if we're looking at resumes and what they accomplished in the sport and who they beat, I feel like Khabib never got to. I don't think he had the same longevity as a lot of the other people. I feel like Khabib, his last 3 wins were so good against such high level competition. But if you look at who he fought before that, he never really racked up those big lightweight names that you would have liked to see him rack up before he retired. So I think if we're talking about like greatest, and that's the word you have listed there, I would put Khabib at number 4. Number 3, I would put Anderson Silva. I think Anderson Silva, I mentioned this on social media this week. He was less than a year younger than Khabib is now when he started in the UFC. And at that starting point, he racked off 16 wins in a row. He's the longest consecutive days as champion of any fighter in the UFC. And people forget how good Anderson Silva is. Like, I think if you look at his recent years, he's kind of older, but I mean, when he started to go downhill on that first Weidman fight, he was 38 at the time. Like, you got to think of at 38, fighters are usually way past their prime, and that's when he started to dip, was at age 38. Just the things that he could do in the cage, you did not see a lot of people with the ability to do. He was just a step ahead of everybody. It seemed like his opponents were in quicksand when they were facing him. He just knew what was coming next, and he could telegraph it. Just an unbelievable fighter. Number 2, I would put Georges St-Pierre. I think Georges St-Pierre is certainly one of the all-time greats, and I think in terms of sheer skill, he's really high on the list, like similar to Khabib. I just think that George could do it all. He was really good at striking, fantastic at grappling, adapted the perfect style of grappling for MMA, and beat a lot of really solid competition during his day. If you talk about the best welterweights of all time, you're looking at him, you're looking at Matt Hughes, and he beat Matt Hughes. I know he lost to Matt Hughes initially, but also the win over BJ Penn. I think it's 2 wins over BJ Penn, and just a lot of really strong wins on his resume against guys when they were in their prime who were really good, like John Fitch, for example. When he beat John Fitch, I believe John Fitch was undefeated, and John Fitch was able to beat just about anybody on any given night. Like, you look at the names kind of now in hindsight, they don't seem as good, but at the time, those were strong names. And then number 1, I would say, is John Jones. If you look at who he was beating at such a young age, he was going through murderer's row of what was considered to be the best division in the sport at the time. He was destroying Rampage Jackson, destroying Lyoto Machida, destroying Shogun Rua, beating Rashad Evans, beating Daniel Cormier twice, although one's been overturned. His resume just speaks for itself. He has, Anderson had 16 wins in a row. Jones, if you don't count the no contest, has 17 wins in a row. And I just think he's the greatest to ever do it. I scored that fight against Reyes against him. I thought Reyes won that fight, but you can't take that off his resume because the judges gave it to him, right? So I think that when you look at his resume, I think it's the best resume in MMA. And if you look at just how much better he was than the best guys in the division when he was at such a young age, I just don't think we've seen anybody like John Jones before.
Okay, so the question is, if the win actually went to Reyes and Reyes was the champion, do you think one would be counting John Jones possibly in their top 5 list?
Yeah, I think that he'd still be in everybody's top 5 as long as you're not disqualifying him for the performance-enhancing drug test. That seems to be why a lot of people disqualify John Jones. Even if he had lost to Reyes, I think I would still probably have him at number 1. Like, if you look at how many times George lost, George lost more times than John Jones did in his career. So I don't know. I still think John, what he did at such a young age, becoming the youngest UFC champion and then defending it so many times. I know he had a lot of problems outside of the cage and the aforementioned drug test, but I still think that John is the person you have to put at the very top of that list.
Yes, well, my man, it was a pleasure having you on. It took a while, but we did it, and we had some fun while doing it. Sorry for you taking the time. Like I said, it was awesome. Go enjoy your day, and we'll be talking soon.
Hey, thanks, Simon. Yeah, anytime. I know it took us a while to put it together, but I gave you my word I would do it, and here we are. So pleasure speaking with you. Send the best to your family, and we'll talk soon.
All right, you as well. Take care. Bye. There he was, TSN's own Aaron Bronsteter. Next week, tune in. Sometime next week, we will have an episode coming out for you guys. Stay tuned, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of Behind the Grind.